Good afternoon and thank you all for joining us today. I am Riti Devnath, Assistant Professor, School of Health Sciences, and on behalf of NSHM Knowledge Campus, I welcome you all for this session. Now, NSHM is one of the best educational destinations in India that has successfully created industry-ready professional researchers and entrepreneurs. NSHM has leveraged the best by engaging models of knowledge management across campuses and creating a vibrant and futuristic learning environment. Now, lockdown during COVID-19 has presented us with severe challenges, and we are now confined to our houses. But I think this has not deterred our healthcare workers from staying away from their duties. Now, public health focuses on improving and protecting the community health and the well-being. And today, taking another step ahead, at NSHM, we have come together on this digital platform in these unprecedented times to talk about the health awareness regarding COVID-19 and what would make us to be a successful healthcare professional. Now, today we have three speakers lined up who would enlighten us on this issue. And in the concluding part of this webinar series, we will be having a question and answer round from the participants. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce you all to our first speaker of the day. It is Dr. Preetham Roy. And Dr. Roy, as we all have known him, is a medical doctor and trained public health specialist. He has a wide range of knowledge in epidemiology, biostatistics, policy framing, developing and implementing health interventions, and health system strengthening. He is the editor of 2 national journals with credit of many national and international publications, and currently he is working with World Health Organization in the Neglected Tropical Diseases Division, and he is leading the department in our own state, West Bengal. So I would now request Dr. Roy to initiate the session. So Dr. Roy, are you there online?
Yeah,
Dr. Preetham Roy?
very good afternoon. Very good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Am I audible?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, sir, you're
Very
audible.
good afternoon. Am I audible? If
Yes.
anyone from the panelist or if Dr. Riti can confirm.
You are audible.
Yeah, Dr. Ribu has confirmed you're audible. I think you can carry forward.
So thank you. I think, yeah, thank you. So it's a pleasure. NSHM organize such a wonderful webinar, and in this post-COVID context, I think for all of us, it will be very interesting because as outlined that we will be having 3 different sessions, but all interlinked. So currently, if we see, we are going through pandemic situation, which the entire world, including us, have not seen beforehand. So it's something new, something unprecedented, and it has changed entire lifestyle, our way of thinking, our work pattern, everything in a different way. So this is a context where we are learning, and maybe after once we come messages in terms of public health perspective, I find it to be
এখন হচ্ছে
very interesting way that currently if we see that there is a infodemic management is very much required. If we see the internet, it is a very proven powerful tool for disseminating information, but at the same time we are seeing that there are a lot of misinformation, disinformation during this COVID pandemic. And to combat this, we need to have something circulating these incorrect informations, we need to neutralize these negative effects. And the most important things what we can do is to disseminate accurate information and educate the people that what are the vulnerabilities to this misinformation. If we look currently, there are situations awareness has led to a partial problem, like there is lot of stigma ongoing in this COVID context. Don't know, so there are messages, they know that how this infection spread, but they don't know that how this infection doesn't spread, and that actually lead to a type of social stigma, uh, environment where we feel threatened. So there lies the importance of public health information system, public health people who can design and plan out that what can be the actual messages, how it can be circulated, how the risk can be communicated. So this is very informed uh, process, and it is very important. From WHO perspective, to manage this infodemic phenomenon, what we have launched information network of epidemics, which is called APWIN, which disseminate the large volume of evidence-based informations. And by identifying those work and those trusted source of information can help in better decision making. So if we talk about public health in large, it is a multidisciplinary approach. It's one body cannot do everything. So even if we want to give a correct communication, a correct social message, a correct technical message, we need help of lot of people. At the same time, if we want to fight with this COVID in this pandemic situation, the COVID management is also not a single person or a single professional work. It needs inputs from various parts, and thus we can actually move forward. Coming to this, we have the look after that what can be the different sources from where we can get the information. So we need help of the epidemiologist, we need help of doctors, we
Exactly. হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ মনে হচ্ছে কোথা থেকে বলতে ওনাকে একটু ফোন করে দিয়ে বলতে পারেন নাকি? হুম। I
sorry
think Dr.
for, I think in between I got disconnected where I left. So to what if we look at this public health aspect, so if we want to really work out on this, we need a we need to have a multidisciplinary approach, and we need to work out on different professional groups. So starting from doctors, nurses, public health expert, people from nutrition, people from journalism, people from mass communication who can do this risk communication, people having a knowledge about logistic management, people have informations on laboratories. So all these people need to put their technical knowledge together to make these social things happen.
Dr. Roy, again, I think there is a connection problem and you are going offline. Dr. Roy, are you there online? Dr. Roy, can you hear us? হ্যালো, বলছি দেখো প্রবলেম হচ্ছে এখানে মনে হচ্ছে। হুম 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 হুম।
Hello.
Dr. Pritam Roy, are you there online?
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, in between, I think you're going offline, and that's the reason you're not audible to the participants.
Okay. So is it audible now?
Yeah, it is audible now. Can we continue now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir.
So from the multidisciplinary approach, when we go for this COVID pandemic situation, so what we can do that it needs to be approached. So we need help of doctors, we need help of nurses, we need help of epidemiologists, a public health expert, we need help of journalists, people who are trained with mass communication so that they can do this risk communication. We need people who are good with the visuals, and we need people who are good in logistics management, people who are informed and knowledgeable about virus, microbiologists. So it's not a one man or one professional approach. So it needs to be done incorporating everybody. So then only we can do standardized, structured information system which will be helpful to deal with this. Because what we said that this social stigma is very much currently, if we look at the pandemic context. So these needs to be dealt in a better way. Then the most important thing that we need to create during our messages is that how it is interpreted. So the correct interpretation of messages needs to be relooked. So that will be very important. Next, if we look at these public health emergencies during these outbreak situations of these communicable diseases, it creates a lot of anxiety. So this type of anxiety causing people and communities to this social isolation. So to make change of this social behavior, we need to tailor these messages, which is very important. So what people want to know all of a sudden, so there will be that, what is the new about these diseases, how it is transmitted, who are at risk of development, am I at risk of development? If I am, then what we can need to do, and what were the areas where it will be transmitted. So if we look at our public health knowledge and if we look at how to deal with, so these will be the important things which the social messages and the contents must include.
So this is very important that when we are trying to create any general or social or health awareness, particularly in this COVID context, so we need to keep all these points there. And for creating this information system, we need experts. So that is very important that post-COVID, we will be requiring a huge lot of people. So a lot of public health people, public health experts, and people from other domains. Having those expertise is very important. So that's the message that we want to give through this webinar, that this is an opportunity to gather and collect new experiences. Based on those experiences, we can tailor that what are the educations, what are the opportunities that we have. So maybe in the upcoming session, in 2 sessions, we will be also looking after that what are the opportunities. So where are those opportunities? So one must need to know that where are those important opportunities are and what type of correct knowledges we need. But through this message that creating this health awareness is very important. Public health literacy is one of the most demanding things that not only India, the whole globe is what we require now, because then only we can go away and deal with this type of pandemic. So it's a pandemic for now, but in upcoming days, we are seeing that there are lots of new viruses coming out, new infections, new diseases or syndromes coming, new epidemics are occurring. So to fight with all those things, a trained set of manpower with multidisciplinary approach is very much required. So with this, I leave the session to move forward to the next speaker, and I will again chip in after that so that we can have a holistic discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Roy, for providing us such significant information about COVID-19 and the suggestions which you have given, and you have spoken about public health professionals being required to work out and handle COVID-19 situations. So that would be very much beneficial for our students and the upcoming healthcare professionals in the coming era. The second speaker of our webinar is Dr. Madhumita Dubey, a well-known, renowned personality in her own field. Dr. Madhumita is the Director Professor of Public Health at All India Institute of Hygiene and Public Health. She is involved in teaching and research activities for MD Community Medicine, MPH Epidemiology, MSc Applied Nutrition, and many other health-related courses. Ma'am, her special interests are health promotion and education, social and behavioral changes intervention, IEC activities, health literacy, maternal and child health, and nutrition. Dr. Madhumita has published more than 100 papers in national and international journal of repute. On behalf of NSHM, ma'am, I welcome you to our next session, and Dr. Madhumita would talk about the career prospects which there are in the public health domain post COVID-19. So, ma'am, the session is all yours. Please take over.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I heard? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, once again, welcome to this webinar, which I think has a lot of relevance in today's public health scenario. I will take up from where Dr. Pritam Roy signed off. That is, we have spoken about COVID-19 presenting us with the true picture of public health. One, that it is teamwork. Two, that it requires a multidisciplinary team with different competencies, both from not only from the I think only doctors and nurses or only the medical field, but it goes far beyond that. And as days go by, we are understanding that more and more people have to be involved in this, both in preparedness and in response. And this team, of course, varies in its composition from the field level to the local level to the subnational level, regional level, and the national levels. And gradually, as people gain competencies and gain experiences, they can move up the career ladder. Obviously, career is something which is basically a choice to utilize the opportunities that you have to progress in your pathway, in your professional pathway. So basically, what does COVID offer us now? I would not say COVID, I would say that pandemics. It is a good time for public health in the sense that the renewed importance of such multidisciplinary skilled teams of public health have been emphasized that's the pro part of having a pandemic, but it has also opened up some glaring shortcomings of the existing systems. The main among which was a crunch in workforce. We really did not have enough people with different capacities, with different competencies which are required to respond and to deal with this pandemic. This team basically would require a lot of different people, as we've been discussing. The first, I think, again, taking up from what Dr. Roy said, is the communication and social mobilization experts. What is happening now is, again, a glaring example of what miscommunication or wrong emphasis on communication can lead to. All the stigma, panic, anxiety, worry, all these are quite natural. And had they been planned and dealt with in lines with competent people who are knowledgeable in behavioral epidemiology, who are knowledgeable in the different models of behavior change, and going along that, just like prescriptions, these need to happen with knowledgeable people. Awareness is simply not dissemination of information. It goes far beyond that. Changing behavior involves much more than that. So basically, we need experts in communication, in social mobilization. It is very simplistic to think that all journalists or mass communicators would be able to do this. They would require close hand-holding by technical experts also. So there are, I think Dr. Ribhu Basu is going to talk about the different opportunities which you have in career progression. But as a word of advice, I would suggest that there are enough online courses now available for your own interest and for your future development also. It is possible to go through them. There are also various curricula followed in different courses which have a part of it dedicated to these issues. And I think NSHM hosting this webinar also opens up a possibility of NSHM tailoring some need-based courses at this hour. So one was this communication and social mobilization expert. The other practically medical domain, I think medical and related domain, is the case and clinical management. Of course, the doctors and nurses are all being updated, trained, retrained, because this infection being new, though pandemics are not new, as Preetam has already said, we are learning much new things in this process, and gradually this is a continuous process of learning. The third most important part, where I think, again, a lot of other people can also be involved, is infection prevention and control. This is an area which has not really been very much emphasized, though we all do it to a certain extent. But this pandemic has again brought to light the very important part of it, this infection prevention and control being part of protocol in every healthcare facility, right down from the field level to the topmost facility. And there should be a quality audit, there should be an ongoing process of monitoring. So a person who really knows these is in a very good position to actually monitor and coordinate these activities. So there are, again, WHO itself has some online certification courses for this, and there will be newer courses also coming up and existing courses which have part of their curriculum devoted to this. The third most important thing which we understand now, of course, epidemiological surveillance. This is very important to understand the course of the disease, the spread of the disease, what turns are it going to take. The epidemiologist is the kingpin, or rather the key person who is going to direct policies, who is going to generate evidence for policy making, for making program managers aware of what is happening, and accordingly corrections or modifications can be done in programs as well. But again, most epidemiological and surveillance officers are also from medical background, though now there are other, I think other people also are coming into the fray. So there are some things which can also be done by non-medical people, which again, Dr. Basu can tell you of some of the courses which are run throughout the country and online, which gives you some idea. The other important thing is the data manager. You think epidemiology is very much, in fact, all our responses are very much driven by data. So the data collection information, as Pritam has mentioned, that this information has to be generated very in a lucid, in a transparent manner, and we have to understand data. Basically, the understanding of data is a very critical skill, which again the data manager can help. Data managers are basically non-medical people, so this is another very good career opportunity, I think, in this present day pandemic, and in days to come we are going to really going to try and develop some teams. Already their process has started in different states in the country as a whole, so data managers will be in great demand. Logisticians, Pritam has mentioned that there are managers who just maintain and monitor the logistics of such RRTs, the rapid response teams, which we have set up. It's there in every country, in every nation, and it is again at different levels. Then, as you are seeing repeatedly, people are really worried, really anxious. So there is a lot of scope of mental health specialists also, particularly psychosocial dealing. So counselors and other people who are able to deal with such people in times of stress. And that doesn't mean only people who are affected with COVID. There are people around them, there are the community at large who needs to be dealt with. And in future, I think this is also going to come up in a big way. I did not mention, but one very important area was the laboratory. The laboratory plays a very key role. So, of course, that's a very specialized subject. It involves microbiology, it involves virology, it involves testing, but the people with bioscience background can take up some of these options in future, because laboratory quality auditing, all these are going to come in a very big way. And if you really look into future pandemics also, now you know zoonosis are going to take place. All our very recent pandemics in the past or epidemics in the past have been very linked to zoonosis. So veterinarians will play a very important role. The conventional thought of veterinarians as treating dogs and cows are going, and they go much beyond that. A lot of research, a lot of teaching, a lot of training opportunities are there. So they form a very important part of this team as well. Then also environmental health. Ultimately, you know, all this is going to boil down into a One Health concept, which is very comprehensive, very holistic. So in days to come, it will not only be a person falling sick and then getting treated. Though it is important, the dictum is testing, treating, isolation or quarantine, and mobilizing the community for adopting precautionary behavior. But ultimately, we have to move far beyond that. So I think these are lots of opportunities are going to come your way. But whatever we do, the important gaps which we really have noticed is one in information management. The other important thing is mostly we are lacking in language skills. As a teacher of many years, I think one very important thing is not only to know, to be able to express it, to write it, prepare a report, disseminate it. So these soft skills also have to be, I think, developed for any person who wants to work in public health, because it involves not only speaking or dissemination, it involves saying difficult things in a very simple way. So management skills, interpersonal skills, writing technical documents, dissemination of reports, then, as I said, language skills, etc. And of course, computer literacy. That has to be the call of the hour. So I think these are some of the issues which I would like to focus on. And I'm open to any further questions which you have, which I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful session. Our participants would surely be benefited as you have enlightened them with new areas of career prospects post-COVID-19. And I'm sure that participants would be looking up to that there are new areas where they can work up to, and they can build themselves as successful public health professionals. Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll meet after Dr. Basu's speech
Sure.
at the end at the question answer round. Please
Sure.
stay back with us. With this, we have come to the last part of our session. Our last speaker of the day, it's Dr. Ribu Basu, and the topic which we will talk about is educational requirements to become a successful public health professional. Let me introduce Dr. Ribu Basu to you all. Dr. Ribu Basu is the Assistant Professor Community Medicine, and he is teaching undergraduate medical students at RG Kar Medical College and Hospital. He teaches biostatistics, health management to postgraduate students, and his special interest areas are health economics, statistical modeling, and health management. Dr. Ribu Basu, are you there online?
Yes, I'm there online. Okay,
Dr.
I can
Basu,
start,
are you
right?
there online?
Yes, I'm there. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
please, you can begin the session.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. You can begin the session now.
Thank you, Dr. Riti, for the introduction. I think Dr. Pritam and Dr. Madhumita Madam has made my job a lot easy because I shall be taking cue from them only and trying to develop or to discuss with you the educational requirements of a public health professional. So I have made a very small presentation because I think looking at me is I am not very good looking in that sense. So fine. I'm sharing this presentation with you. Now, educational requirements to be a public health professional. As Madam mentioned, that there are several things, that there are several core competencies which a public health professional should need. And public health is coming in a big way after this COVID pandemic, because people are now realizing what good public health systems can do. In India, I would like to mention that Kerala is one state which has managed the epidemic very well. And they have managed the epidemic because of a very strong public health system. There is no doubt about that. Public health is not a one-man show. It requires a huge teamwork, and it requires a huge teamwork from multiple disciplines. It requires medical professionals, it requires health managers, it requires health advocates, lobbies, politicians, economists, and all other spheres of professions. They work together for a common goal, that is public health or health for the people. Regarding this, I would like to mention that probably we all miss the persons who are the backbone of a public health are not the experts or the professionals, but the ground level workers who, due to their day-to-day activities and due to their touch with the grassroots, can make the most amount of change properly guided by the experts. So let's give them a big round of applause for them, who are the ground level workers, the backbone of our public health system. Now, going into curriculum or education requirements, their terms can be very beautiful to hear, but they are already confusing. So I am initially trying to tell you the confusion what happens in the public health scenario. So first, epidemiology, then law and ethics, biostatistics, occupational health, behavioral sciences, health economics, demography, health management, social sciences, environmental health. You are all being bombarded by this amount of subjects. So whatever you are thinking that, oh my God, so many subjects to listen to. So you are getting confused at the end and thinking that what exactly are we doing with all these subjects? What I would like you to mention that public health is taking its cue or taking its subjects from the mother subjects. The mother subjects are there, like economics, like behavioral sciences, like physics, chemistry, etc. So like medical sciences, like management, these are the subjects which take cue from the mother subjects and develop their own subjects. They just take what is required and what is not required, and then they develop the subject. Public health takes cues from the mother subjects and the applied subject. So you do not need to be a management expert, you do not need to be an economic expert, but what you will need, that for each of these subjects, you will need to have the idea of how to apply these subjects to the domain of public health. Like, I think that today, sitting in this position, medical science and managerial science goes hand to hand and are equally important in public health scenario. All our documents, all the documents which the government of India releases have got a technical set of skills and an operational set of skills. The technical set of skills are coming mostly from the medical sciences, evidences from the medical fields, and the operational parts are coming from managerial sciences. So, as a public health professional, you do not have to go into the details of the medical sciences. You do not have to go into the details of whatever is happening in the clinical aspects. But you have to know a good deal about the pattern of the disease, what is happening, how it is being affecting the different state of the society, and what may be its determinants. And using that knowledge, you will have to put this knowledge into the boxes of managerial sciences. If you cannot put it into the boxes of managerial sciences, then you shall be unable to do much about these medical sciences. So after we have put it in the boxes of management sciences, now we have got the tools like planning, evaluation, leadership, organization, etc. tools you have in your hand. And with the help of that, you can devise a proper program or a proper series of activities for a public health problem. I would like to give this classification that we all make this mistake. What are you interested in? I am interested in managerial sciences. So there are some general tools which all of you need to develop. They are some part of medical sciences, health promotion theories or health behavioral change theories that Madam mentioned, some bit of biostatistics or data sciences, some bit of epidemiology, and a lot of managerial sciences. These general tools you have to keep in your with you. These are your weapons, and with these weapons you can tackle the problems. What may be those problems? Some of you may be working in fields of disaster management, some of you may be working in fields of environmental health, some may be occupational health, some may be working in RCH programs, maternal and child health, some may be working in some communicable diseases like natural vector-borne disease control program, some may be working in some non-communicable diseases. So if you have got these basic 5 weapons properly done, then with the help of these weapons, you can attack any of these systemic areas. So if you have got this part strong, then I think that will be a very good thing that you shall be in your interviews or in the job interviews applications. People will be, whatever is the field of use, you can apply these particular points in the area of application. So precisely speaking, these are the things which you will be doing. These are the things you should be doing for the rest of your life as a public health professional. You will be identifying some problems, whatever problems. It may be a problem in epidemiological part, it may be a problem in managerial part, etc. So for identifying these problems, you will need to know your epidemiology well, your data science or biostatistics well, your managerial sciences well. Then from that problems, talking to a lot of stakeholders, talking to a lot of experts, you will have to develop some good solutions. And your work doesn't end there, because we often say that the academicians like us are often stuck in the first loop only. Problem solutions. We love to criticize. Give us anything, we will criticize. Your work begins in the next part. That is, you have to sell the solutions to the public. You have to sell the solutions to the policymakers. You have to sell the solution to the politicians. You have to sell the solutions to the community members. So for that, you need a lot of writing skills, lot of networking skills. You will have to have a good idea of behavioral sciences and managerial sciences. So obviously this is an oversimplification, but these are the 3 domains you should be working in for the rest of your life: identifying problems, developing solutions, and selling the solutions. So I am ending my presentation here, but what I would like to mention that get hold of these 5 weapons and do not only depend on your course curriculum. There is a lot of online resources available now. I think rather than reading a book, you can go to the online resources in Coursera, in edX, in MITx, in Udemy, in WHO. If you search the courses, you will get the reviews and you will know which courses to follow or not. They will also give certificates. So target that I want to develop this 5 set of skills and go to any level to acquire these skills. the faculties will be helping you, your institution will be helping you, the guest lecturers will be helping you. But whenever you find something is lacking, please look yourself. Please do not be afraid or to go into depth of the subject, so that you have this with you. Because ultimately you shall be going into the field, you shall be going into the career path. So it is your responsibility to acquire these skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Basu, for such interesting highlights. With this, we have come to the end of our presentation from our speakers. And as India moves from a COVID world into a post-COVID world, we look forward into a new era of public health. And we would now have the question and answer round. And I would now request Srijaya to come up with the question and answers. Please give us 5 minutes so that we can begin the question and answer round. Our speakers, please be online. We will start off with the question and answer round very soon. Srijaya, please come online. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon to panelists. I am Dr. Maiti speaking here. I am the director of the School of Health Sciences, NSHM Knowledge Campus, Kolkata Group of Institutions. Actually, we start these webinars from today to aware the society what should be behavior, what should be their movement in after COVID-19. So really your deliberations, I heard from my room, really very much attractive to me, and I think the participants also. I'd like to introduce my college. Here we start the program from 2004. We have the several health science program we are running here. We first of all, we start here the BMLT, Bachelor in Medical Laboratory Technology, Healthcare Management, Bachelor in Public Health, and the Master in Public Health, Dietetics and Nutrition Masters, my BSc in Behavioral Science and Psychology, Master in Psychology, Bachelor in Optometry, Master in Optometry, and last of all, Bachelor in Pharmaceutical Technology and Master in Pharmaceutical Technology. Lot of research are pursuing in this department. We have a different CA, DST, ICMR project, which is running in the campus. And first of all, I'd like to say the madam just now obviously gives the three in infection, prevention, and control. In her speech, especially she mentioned the infection, prevention, and control, obviously, which is challenged by the health professionals. What's happened now? This COVID-19 obviously has changed. There are different paradigms in the healthcare professionals. Previously, what's happened now? If we go to the society, have we seen that only in the panchayat level or the block level, the recruitment in the public health is very minimum. All are now, obviously, the management to diagnosis, you're responsible to the doctors. Now I think government should think about it. Every corner due to control of the infection, prevention, and control of the epidemics, the healthcare professional is very much required in the grassroots level. So this is, I think, after this COVID-19, although a lot of changes in education, previously what's happened now, If it's a seminar or presentation, then obviously gathering is required in a hall. Either no, in a big hall is required 1,000 capacity, 500 capacity. Then no, is a journey from the, a bit far away from the hall. So now what's happened no? In this online, totally the change of the conception have been suitable for the educator and the as well as for the teacher, because from the home or from the institutions they can learn and teach. That is for LMS, learning management system, has been changed. So obviously it is the medicine of the after COVID-19. COVID-19 has a these advantages to the educated as well as the learner. They can learn from their home. So thank you very much. So you have a, I like to, and have the different questions. So please, I request to all the panelists to try to solve these questions to the audiences. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Srijaya, you can now begin off with the question and answer session.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, all our panelists are there online.
Okay,
So over to you.
right. Very good evening to all the panelists. Thanks. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for such a refreshing insight into the area of public health and the scopes and opportunities in the area of the post-COVID-19. We have around 200 plus attendees attending this program today. So I have received certain questions. So I will just shoot them one by one. The first question is from Dr. Ananya. She asks, what is the scope for MPH pass outs to get associated in WHO? So I think this question is directly directed to Dr. Preetham Roy. So if you could kindly share the answer. So you're not audible?
Please.
Yes. So thank you for the question and for this important discussion and holding all this discussion. And coming to the question answer, and so I'm thanks to the participant who raised the question. And particularly it's so when we have actually discussing about the career opportunities, so it's most commonly people will be asking the questions. So I don't think that it is not for getting in any organization, be it WHO or UNICEF or any UN organization or government organization. What we need to know is that so what we are applying for, what is my background, and based on that, whether that job is suitable for me or not. So if we take the other way around, so think from the perspective of the person who is employing you. So what he or she is looking at you. So if we know that I have this post or this job demands a special criteria, a special set of knowledge, a special set of skills, and of course the employer will definitely enlist that in their job advertisement. So when those are there, we need to find out that whether it is suitable for me or not. Coming to a very specific, so what you asked is that whether MPH people are being taken in WHO or not. Yes, definitely they are being taken. So there are lots of staff who have a degree with the MPH. Coming to very particularly the deputy head of India is also an MPH. So it's nothing that people will not be taken as such. But what we need to know is that I have the correct set of knowledge, correct set of skill for that particular job. What is the experience they have asked for? What is the other skills they have asked for? And if we can get through all those things, the mix of all those things will definitely give us the job that we are looking for.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I would just pose my next question. This is from Dr. Aditi. As we all know that we have a lot of students on board today. So as a fresher, she wants to know what are the opportunities that they can get in public health, and how can they get jobs in government sector as a fresher, and what could be their basic salary structure at the onset? If anybody can answer that.
I think Vibhu can go with it because you are more aware of the salary structure of government establishments in the state. And in the central level, of course, everybody is a fresher in the beginning. So there is a base from which we start and we get promotions. But government jobs gradually, I mean, just I'll sign off with this saying that government jobs gradually will not be only about safety and security. As you are well aware now, even government jobs are contractual. So it is basically looking into skill-based competencies. So we have to develop certain skills which are in demand. And as rightly Dr. Preetham has said, it is best to look into some of them, see whether you fit into it or whether your aptitude fits into it, and try for them. Yes, Ribhu, you can talk about the other things.
So, being an MPH in the government field, as Madam has rightly pointed out, that it is unlikely that you will end up with a permanent like public service job. Okay, but nowadays the government is taking many consultants and epidemiologists under various schemes, under various programs. So you can, with your set of skills, you can fit in one of those jobs. Now, many of these jobs have got a very complicated financing structures. Some of them is financed by the state government, some of this is financed by the program and the government. So they have got very complicated pay structures. But so I cannot tell you a base salary what is starting. But I see jobs ranging from starting from 35,000 rupees per month. There are some jobs to even 1,20,000 rupees per month in some ICMR jobs. Okay, so instead of targeting the jobs, what you may target is now as a fresher, you can look through the job sites. You can register your name at DevNet Jobs and other development portals. You look into their eligibility criteria and essential criteria, desirable criteria. They will mention some skill sets. You note down those skill sets. You will see that these skill sets have got a large amount of repetitions. You note them down and you can develop your own skill sets according to this one. Along with the whatever curriculum you are facing, whatever gaps are there, you can develop or cure those gaps by developing it on your own only, looking at the job prospects. So that will be a good idea, because in that way, when you are have passed out, by that time you shall be industry ready. Okay, so that's my answer.
Thank you, sir. I'll move on to the next question. This is also a student-oriented question, actually, and this has been posed by Shomnath Chottoraj. He happens to be a student of hospital management, and there are a few others also with him. They would like to know what would be the role of a non-medical health official post-COVID-19. Non-medical health official post-COVID-19 roles, basically.
Well, I can make an opening remark. Even post-COVID-19, whatever health problems were there pre-COVID-19 are still going to be there. Hospitals will be there, health facilities will be there. So whatever prospects of hospital management students were there earlier will be here as well. But with that, they have some newer opportunities. As we were talking about logistic monitoring, logistic managements, now rapid response or response teams are perhaps going to be in place for a larger period of time. But again, let me point out that whenever we are talking about all these jobs and careers, we are thinking only about the public sector, because by and large, public health is still in the public system. Very few private players in the public health arena. So gradually, what COVID has done is it has opened up the private sector also to this. So gradually, I suppose now the private sector will also come in as players in this. So that opens up an opportunity. Hospital management, or rather management skills, as Ribhu has also pointed out, is one of the basic skills which are required in public health teamwork in every field. So you have ample opportunities for work pre and post COVID-19.
Anything else to be added, sir?
Yeah.
Rivu, sir?
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, Rivu, continue. Then I will
Okay,
pitch in.
fine.
You continue first.
So like I can tell you one thing, that all the assistant supers which we are mixing with every day are non-medical persons. Okay. So being a master in hospital administration, you will have a huge demand in as an assistant super in any of the hospitals, and these assistant supers are permanent jobs, and they're quite lucrative jobs too. But you have to work a lot, that is fine, and you have to develop the required skill sets, because MHE is being now conducted by many universities. So that is one point. And number 2 point is that also in the private sector, as an MHA practitioner, in the private sector, you have got a lot of like scopes. Okay. And with the public health institutions coming up like NGOs and all those things, there also we have got some scopes, but I think being in hospital administration, it is better if you stick to some kind of hospital, either public or private. That will be of much use to you, and it will be nearer to a subject. Thank you.
So, I add on to this both speaker's view, and what I found is that most of them like the non-medical part that everybody is asking. So there is a huge role, in fact. So what Dr. Rivu said is about the hospital superintendent. There are various deputy superintendent posts which are open. So they need to know that how the program knowledge needs to be transmitted for running the hospital administration. So there will be a role will be very, very crucial. So let me give 1-2 examples to make things very clear. So think about the current COVID context. So in the current COVID context, if we need to set up the ward in a separate way, so it is very important to set up the ward in a different way, making the 1 meter distance, keeping all the barriers. Then we need to put the knowledges into the action, like the social distancing. So how to maintain the queues in the registration counter, in the pharmacy, and then how to do the cleaning daily. So what are the work that needs to be done? Who should be put in there? How should they be managed? Then how to handle the biomedical waste? Then how we plan the HR management? How we place the HR in different shifts? How we keep a backup of HR, that if suppose 20% of my staff suddenly gets ill, how to go for the backup. So if you look that in the management, the hospital management team actually has a huge role. So they need to do the plan to know the basics of all the diseases and then the preventive measures. So they have to utilize their public health skill in maintaining that. And those person who can effectively do this is the person who is required everywhere. So the people will be hiring you instantly if you can manage all those things in a proper way without creating much noises. So this post, the hospital management, hospital administration, has a very important role in coming days. So they need to acquire all those skills and they will definitely get good jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. The next question is from Dr. Supratim. He is asking whether it is possible to spread coronavirus through the contact of mucus secretion from any orifice and skin other than respiratory route.
Pritam, you can answer this.
Yeah. So I was just looking after, so there are 2-3 questions of similar type. So one was that COVID-19 can spread through food or through secretions or those things. So it's very important that we try to understand that how the diseases spread, and by the social messages of hand washing, social distancing, these are very important. These are also interlinked with the last thing that I said about the biomedical waste management. So it's a novel virus. To start with, the COVID is a novel virus. So what do we mean by a novel virus? So we mean by novel virus that we don't know everything, every details of the virus. It is very easy to handle it. So every day we are learning new things. So suppose what the knowledge we had in January had changed in the March and April. From March and April, if we look after in May, June, so the knowledge has changed. So every day we are getting new evidences, and accordingly, we are changing our guidelines, our way of thinking, our way of prevention. Coming to those situations and all those things, so how the diseases spread. So what the current knowledge says that these are through the respiratory route, the viruses are being shed. But these viruses are also shed in other routes, so like through the urine and stool also. But they are not actually the main transmitter of the diseases. So the main transmitter are the viral shedding from the respiratory route. Now, how these are shedding? So when we cough, when we, so these are coming even during talking or even in any episode, it may come out from our. And how to transmit to another person? So it may directly come in contact with our faces, near our mouth, nose, and ears, and from there the virus can enter. Because the receptors, the ACE receptors, are usually placed in these sites. Apart from that, what happens that if these secretions or any droplet infections, they cannot float, so they will definitely go down and precipitate nearby to that person. So those may be in his hand, in the table, in the food item, whatever is nearby, it will drop there. So if we touch that, and again that hand comes in contact with our face, the disease will transmit. So there is a definite chances of getting transmitted if a virus is being shedded from a person and gets in surface nearby to him, and another person touches those surface and again it comes in contact with the faces. So if we look after that for preventing aspects, it has been now told that any used food items, even if you say the utensils needs to be properly washed, because they may have the potential, because the saliva or any particles which have close contacts with the body fluids may actually transmit the diseases, provided they are in close contact with that positive patient. So we must definitely take care of that, but still respiratory route is the main transmission, and it is through the droplet infection.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. We have an interesting question from Dr. Sadril. He has done his graduation in homeopathy. So he wants to know that modern medicine has not much success in case of COVID-19. But on the other hand, medicine trials in homeopathy has been a great success. Still, why is homeopathy not given importance?
I think I'm not a homeopathy person, so I will not be able to do justice to this answer. But basically, the government of India has adopted certain protocols from the homeopathy sector. The Ayush recommendations go with it, and some clinical trials are on way for a more standardized protocol of allopathic medicines as well. As you know, to adopt something as a program or as a general recommendation, it has to undergo a lot of rigorous trials in the field level. So I suppose it has been, but again I say I suppose because I'm not very well aware of it. If these homeopathic regimens have undergone extensive field trials, have been proved in sufficient numbers, because when you recommend something for the general community, it has to be, the evidence has to be very robust, very strong before we can do something like that. So again, since I'm not a homeopath, I'm not aware of this. Perhaps Rivu and Pritam, if you know something else, you can add to it.
So it's my personal opinion is that everything is science. So if we take Ayurveda, if we take Unani, if we take even yoga and natural therapy, if we take Siddha, if we take homeopathy, everything is based on some science. So all these specialities has grown with their sciences. They have a set of looking after the disease in a different way and recommending things in a different way. So there may be a difference of opinion among different subgroups. So with the Ayush and the modern, so everybody has a way of dealing. If the person gets cured and if the person gets benefited from something, there is nobody, I think, is preventing from where they are getting the remedies. So if I think there is no clash between modern medicine or Ayurveda with versus homeopathy versus allopathic medicine, we should not look in that approach. So whoever is skilled in his or her own specialty. So if one is specialized in Ayurveda, and if Ayurvedic medicine is actually working, they can prove. And if the patient is convinced and is getting benefit, so I think there is no issue with that. And we must not compare that why it is not being there or why it is there. We must try to improve all the subjects, and ultimately the population will be benefited. That's my personal.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from an anonymous attendee, basically. So he is asking that what can be done to improve the mental health of a person whose mother is a nurse and is in a precarious environment?
This situation is actually, it's very situation specific. The problems the person is facing because of is basically worry, anxiety, fears of the mother acquiring infection, or perhaps that is the place where this person is in. So I think there's a lot of scope of basically getting proper information, seeing that the mother is receiving appropriate personal protective equipment, using it properly, and getting checked from time to time. If they are following the standard operative protocols, the chances of acquiring such infection are minimal. So along with that, if there are, there are certain personalities who worry too much, who are too anxious. So if he or she feels that needs some mental help or some psychological help, it is best to consult somebody to be able to discuss and to come out with solutions for this unnecessary worry or anxiety.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dobe.
Yeah, so I just want to add few points on
sure.
this, because this is very important globally and also in India. So I think mental health and COVID-19 is very, very important in the current context. So everybody is having a fear, worry, or stress, and this is a normal response. We must emphasize that in such situation, it is very normal to get worried and stressed. So it is not something that it is very abnormal, because we are perceived with some threats. We are hearing lots of newses, and so we are experiencing this fear. So there are also other issues with this fear, like if we see that it is like losing the job, having a temporary unemployment, or from schooling related, or lack of communication, not able to go and see people, not able to take care of a person whom you like or love very much properly because you are unable to go and attend them physically. So these are actually creating this adverse situation which is directly affecting our mental health. So I would suggest that don't take it as a very pathological thing. It is normal in this situation. And it is not only you, there are lots of people who are having this same problem. At the same time, it is very important to come out from this and cope with it. So what we can do is that try to find out that what actually is your stress, why you are getting stressed. So what I told of all are some generic points, but there must be a certain. So for you or somebody else, it may be a job loss that is causing the mental, or because of getting the diseases, maybe the cause of stress, or not able to go to and meet some person, maybe the stress. So we need to find out why the stress is for me. And once you find out, you try to get informations that how I can deal with it. Second, I would suggest that in the current context, we have forgotten to take care of our recreation and all those activities. So try to spend some time in listening to music or something doing which actually pleases your mind, or reading book or something that helps you to come up with all the news items that are coming. And trust me, in the news items, you will always get everything, something is worrisome. But there is also good thing that is happening. Lots of people are recovering. Lots of people are joining jobs. We are trying to push back so that we get our normal life back. So this is a time which is temporarily disturbing to all of us, but we should fight and we will get away with it. And also there are various websites and also government helpline. So if you really feel distressed, you can call those helpline numbers and get appropriate help. And don't think that you are all alone. There are a lot of people who are suffering. So discuss with person who has the correct knowledge, and don't with a person who doesn't have and will panic you much. So that's the main thing that I want to pass through this webinar, because this is a very important things to discuss in the current situation.
Can I add something? Okay, I would like to add in queue with Pritamda that actually in the question and answer box, I was looking at the questions and I found 10 or 11 questions for mental health only. Okay, so I think that like he mentioned about the helplines and all those things. Government of India's website mohw.gov.in and WHO website has specifically given guidelines how to cope up mentally during this COVID outbreak, and that those two documents are excellent documents. Okay, so there are 8 or 9 points, and they have given in pictures what to do, what not to do. I will just mention one very salient point which I am personally experiencing from my peers and friends. Do not get hooked to social media, because social media and WhatsApp, Facebook, etc. will only start magnifying your fears. Okay, they have got a way of magnifying your like fears and magnifying your like happiness also, but here mostly you are afraid now, right? So abstain from them as far as possible. Do some constructive walks in the household. You must be doing a lot of household chores, so help your wife if you are a male person and married, so that will be taking a lot of energy from you. So get involved in some work, look after your child, and do whatever you want. Okay, but do not get addicted to this media, and try to listen to the news of only the like national channels, national news channels. Okay, because again this all the news channels, they are trying to do the hype, they are trying to increase their TRP, and they will sensationalize the news, and you will get addicted, but you will also be afraid. Okay, so there is no point in doing that. Whatever will happen, you should after taking the best of precautions. So try to follow this and try to look on this guidelines, because many of you may be reluctant to ring our helpline for this. And when if you feel that the problem is very severe, you cannot tolerate it anymore, please ask for help from a professional person, because the professionals also now know that things are changing, so they have adapted themselves to help with psychiatrists or psychologists. So please seek help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Basu. I think this mental health is actually an ongoing situation right now. So thanks for addressing this in such detail. The next question is very targeted. So I would say this is a career-oriented question again. This is for Dr. Dobe. As a data manager, is science background compulsory?
No, it is not. So basically, but the different courses, what we have in the different sort of ongoing courses which you have, I'm not aware about NSHM and its requirements, but at the All India Institute, we do have statistical courses ongoing for health statistics and other issues. But there we have people with background of mathematics or with a little bit of statistics, but it is not very essential that they have biological sciences as well. So if you look at it a very critical way, it doesn't mean that you need to be a biological science graduate.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Basu, there is one question which I would like you to throw some light on. One student wants to know, his name is Sangramajit Basak. He wants to know whether pharmacy has any scope. Students with pharmacy background have any scope in this post-COVID-19 situation?
Obviously, you have got a scope because number one, there are two things. Do not think of the post-COVID situation as an apocalyptic change to whatever was happening. We are still in this world. We are still breathing. Our lungs are exchanging oxygen. The heart is beating pump. So everything is like before only. There is only a stress, a very temporary stress to the system. It is a very major stress. The world has not seen such a stress for around 100 years. It's a major stress. But at the same time, the world is where it was. Kolkataতেই এখনো আছে ঠিক আছে so pharmacy will have all the scopes which it had previous to the post-COVID situation. They are not going to change. And on the other hand, in the post-COVID world, you may actually have some more importance attached to pharmacy because as Dr. Roy and Dr. Dove was also telling that regarding logistics management, regarding professionally trained pharmacists at the medicine shops, which is lacking in many parts of West Bengal now, most parts of West Bengal now, you may have maybe getting more scores because with the government regulations coming up now with antibiotic resistance and all those things, maybe the medicine shops will actually require one pharmacist to stay. Okay, and you can be also involved in government sector in logistics and as acting as pharmacists. So you have got a lot of scope. Don't worry about that. Okay.
Sir, actually, this is also add one word. Recently, I was part of the central team which visited Andhra Pradesh for this COVID response. And you know, now everything is so app-based. In Andhra, they were using an app whereby the pharmacist at the medicine shop was giving inputs or putting in the data for patients who had come directly to the medicine store to buy paracetamol or azithromycin. So you see, even data management or data sharing, community pharmacists have an important role to play. So you see, these diverse skills or diverse responsibilities, they'll form part of a team, and these will open up in future.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I also want to add one point, particularly for the pharma students who are associated and people who are associated with this. So particularly in this post-COVID context, government of India has taken a new decision in which actually they are promoting local manufacturing of bulk drugs. So the API industry, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, production of this has been promoted by government of India, and they are creating pharma parks in different parts of India. So government has come about with around 53 API products which government of India will be promoting so that India doesn't import those things from outside countries, especially from China. So there is a huge opportunity of creating new pharmaceuticals company and other pharma houses in upcoming days in India, in different parts of the states and different parts of the country. So it is very particularly that there will be a huge job demand in upcoming days because the pharma industry will be booming, and government has given 3 years special packages for this pharma industry to build up this huge demand for this local manufacturing process. So everybody will be having a huge job boost up in coming 3 years. So all you need to have a base skill and get selected and get to updated where those informations are available. So go through the government of India's websites about pharmaceuticals and the products which are upcoming, get your knowledge and skills updated so that you get selected. So that's one of the message I want to give. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. Ma'am, the next question is, what would be the possibilities of a career in public health after pursuing bachelor degree in life sciences? This has been posed by Nabila Akhtar.
Well, I think we have discussed in detail what are the various possibilities. after graduation, at our institute, we have several postgraduate, if she is a local person, then there are various, all through India, there are various such courses, which are master's courses, which can be followed up. And if you take the COVID situation in particular, with this bachelor's degree, you can do lots of certificate courses. Dr. Basu and Dr. Roy has talked in detail about it. If she has been through the webinar, she will be able to access that information. And depending upon her aptitude and the skills which she wants to acquire and the types of jobs which she would like to do, she can develop basic skills in those and be prepared to work in those areas.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Roy, there has been a question from a dental surgeon. Okay. She is asking, like, what is the scope of a dental surgeon after doing an MPH course?
Okay. So the same thing which I told in my first part, and which I think Dr. Rivu also told. So I would just echo the same thing. So it doesn't matter that what exactly your profession is. So if you are a bachelor of something from dental side or from other perspective, getting into public health is just the basic knowledge. So all you have to know is to get the additional skills which fits the job. So what I think what Dr. Rivu said, I would also again say the same thing, that go through different job portals. There are WHO job portals in WHO e-careers. There are there are various portals for job. Go through those portals, look at the jobs, and then you will find that there are certain set of skills that you need to have to get those jobs. So look that what are the essential criteria? Does it fit with what you currently have? Because you cannot change the Bachelor of Dental Science all of a sudden. So that you have. So based on that, what are the jobs that are available, and along with what are the additional skills you need? So go through that and have those skills. Especially I found that one question was also there on distance learning courses and which courses should we adopt. The courses, you will find that there will be 100 courses available online. But of these 100, which 5 you need to pick? The 5 you need to pick is to be decided after you go through these websites and find out that skills they are asking for your job. So go through that after having a Bachelor of Dental Science Services, what are the additional skills I need? And for those additional skills, which certificate course I need to do so that it is fulfilled. So you should choose in that way, and definitely there are opportunity because lots of people are doing. So all you need to have a good epidemiological knowledge, public health knowledge, additional skills, and then you can go for the job. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. I think the questions have stopped coming right now. So anybody else for any other questions?
I would just like to say a few things in the chat section or question answer box. I found few questions which I feel.
So you're not audible, sir.
Hard to clear. So one was regarding. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So like one, what is about the thermal screening? So somebody has asked.
Yes, sir. Right.
Screening. So thermal screening, the thermal gun that we are using doesn't diagnose the patient is having COVID or not. It's just COVID is, for diagnosing COVID, one of the essential component is that you must have a fever. So if you have fever, we do the suspects and we do the test. So the thermal screening will only tell you that currently you are having fever or not, or your temperature is raised or not. And it is not at all confirmatory or even suggestive of having you COVID or not. So it may be for any X, Y, Z reasons that you have fever. So this thermal screening will only tell that temperature is raised or not and has nothing to do with the COVID. Secondly, there was a question which I think needs to be answered was the significance of patient without symptoms. So there is a lot of questions coming these days about asymptomatic cases. So there is symptomatic or truly asymptomatic. There is a slight difference between the two which we need to understand. Pre-symptomatic means currently I am not having symptoms, but after a few days my symptoms will come. So it is a pre-symptomatic. So the symptom has not come yet, but it will come after a few days. Another is truly asymptomatic, when in spite of being positive, the symptoms are not appearing. So they have a role in spread of the diseases, which is being a lot of talks now going on. Yes, if somebody doesn't know, he may or she may not take individual care, or the other person may not take individual care. So that's a public health threat. But saying so, that's the reason why we are emphasizing currently that we must maintain the social distancing and wearing a face mask. The idea is that we don't know the person is actually having COVID or not. So there may be asymptomatic, there may be symptomatic. To make it a universal precaution, we are trying to use face masks so that the disease doesn't spread from myself to the other. And also if there is somebody else in front of me, I also get the protection. So that's why they have a chance of spreading the diseases, but definitely the viral shedding and the virulence may be less. That's one thing. The second, which is very important, is that why we are worried with COVID, because of the death. So in asymptomatic cases, the chances of having fatality, case fatality, is far, far, far less than those having symptoms and having severe symptoms. So that's the added advantage of not having the symptoms. At least the life is saved. So these are the two things that which I thought of saying in this. Thirdly, there was a question about some veterinarian or veterinary sciences. Is there any opportunity? I would say that this is the one of the most upcoming opportunities
You're
in
not
public
audible.
health domain, because what we are seeing that zoonotic diseases. So zoonotic diseases are getting prominent these days. So if we see like this COVID, that transmission from bats or something, still it is debated. But still we are looking that zoonotic diseases are coming up in large number in coming days. And in future days, there are huge opportunity to work with the zoonotic diseases, where veterinary science people will get a priority in looking after that. And recently, WHO has also launched a zoonotic diseases division. So this is a very important, and the government of India and the state government has also formed different committees where zoonotic diseases are looked after, because they can give a significant amount of inputs for those diseases. So that's all sides.
Sir, you're not audible, sir. I think we've lost Dr. Roy.
So
Yes.
Thank you from my side. Is there any other questions we can then look for?
I think that can be all. We can sum up now. So I would request Dr. Riti Devnath. She is currently the Assistant Professor, Department of Healthcare Management at NSHM Kolkata. She teaches students of bachelor's and master's degree in hospital administration, and she's also teaching the master degree in public health. So I would just request her to give the vote of thanks to all of my distinguished panelists. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Srijoya. It was a wonderful session with all our esteemed speakers. On behalf of NSHM Knowledge Campus, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Pritam Roy the state coordinator of World Health Organization, West Bengal, for his relentless support and belief in us and being one of our pillars of support. Thank you, sir, for your inspiring and thought-provoking address. I would also like to thank Dr. Madhumita Dubey, Director, Professor, All India Institute for Hygiene and Public Health, for extending your cooperation and gracing us this occasion in such a short notice, ma'am. We would be glad to have you, ma'am, in our campus as soon as the COVID crisis gets over. And
And we look forward to it.
yeah, sure, ma'am, sure, ma'am. And a big thanks to Dr. Rivu Basu, too, Assistant Professor of Ajikor Medical College and Hospital, and who has been with us since we started off with the MPH course. And he has always extended his cooperation whenever we have required it. So we hope that the students have been immensely benefited by your inspiring thoughts, Dr. Basu. I also thank all the team members from NSHM family, and especially Dr. Shubhashish Maiti, Director, NSHM Knowledge Campus, Kolkata Group of Institutions, my students and the participants across Pan-India who have contributed to making this seminar a huge success. And we hope to continue our efforts with many more such interesting sessions in the future. And thank you all for being a wonderful audience. With this,
Thank
we
you, ma'am.
come to the end of this session. Thank you so much, ma'am, and sirs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much.